members flying up on the Soyuz MS-18. The Soyuz population is going to be increasing from 7 to 10 for a few days, with the addition of NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei, Russian cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov, and Russian cosmonaut and Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky. These three are about to begin their planned two-orbit flight to the station, with the docking scheduled a little more than 3 hours, about 3 hours and 25 minutes after launch at 6:07 a.m. Central Time, 11:07 GMT, 4:07 p.m. in Baykonur, where we have NASA and Roscosmos support teams and official watching the events unfold. The Soyuz MS-18 spacecraft is going to be docking with the Rassvet module. It's on the nadir, or the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment, just under the Zarya module. You can see in this graphic here, we're going to have 4 Russian vehicles attached to the station just a few hours from now. The Soyuz MS-18, the one currently on the pad and bound for the station. And they're going to join the 7 current station residents on board, starting off with NASA astronaut Kate Rubins, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Kuchverchkov, and Russian cosmonaut and Soyuz commander Sergei Ryzhikov. They've been on board since they arrived in the Soyuz MS-17 last October. And also on board right now are the 4 SpaceX Dragon Crew 1 astronauts who've been on board the station since November. And that's 3 NASA astronauts, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, and the Crew 1 commander, Mike Hopkins, and they were joined by JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi. Shannon Walker is going to be taking over as the Expedition 65 station commander. The change of command ceremony coming up on April 15th, a little over a day prior to Rubins, Kuchverkov, and Ryzhikov undocking from the station and returning to Earth aboard their Soyuz spacecraft. Here in Houston, team in Mission Control is going to be monitoring today's launch, getting updates on the flight from their Russian counterparts. Flight Director Paul Kanya is going to be leading the teams for launch and through the first hours of the Soyuz flight. And the Capcom right now is Andreas Mogensen, Andy Mogensen from the European Space Agency. During the Soyuz's climb to orbit, tracking and telemetry is downlinked to ground stations along the flight path, and all of it gets routed here to the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, just outside of Moscow. We'll be seeing a lot of this from over the next couple of hours. And as we will be with you for the next couple of hours, if you have any questions about today's launch, the docking, the rendezvous, anything about the International Space Station that you want to ask us, hop on Twitter, use the hashtag AskNASA, and I'll do my best to get through as many of those as we can today. Today's launch is marking the second flight into space for NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei. This is going to be the first for cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov. He's on the right there. And then this is going to be the 3rd space flight for the MS-18 commander and Russian cosmonaut Oleg Novitsky. This expedition also going to be celebrating the anniversary of a very important milestone in human spaceflight history. And he was the first. On April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to make that slow trek to the top end of a rocket, bound to hurl him into the heavens and into the distant frontier of space. And it was a trip into the most unknown of unknowns.
Wishing you a good flight. Copy, good flight.
Riding on technology still in its nascent stages, until this point developed in the throes of conflict, Yuri took to the skies, ascending into orbit for 108 minutes of history. And then after hurtling back through the Earth's atmosphere, Yuri ejected from his space harbinger and parachuted down to the Kazakh steppe. At that moment, he was transformed into a hero for the Soviet Union and the forerunner for humankind's ventures into outer space. And And though he was taken from us too soon, those that look to slip the bonds of gravity and reach beyond a terrestrial home will forever revere what he accomplished. For once again, Yuri was the first. The Expedition 65 cruise Soyuz launch is going to honor the anniversary of Gagarin's historic flight with the mission patch adorning the fairing of their launch vehicle. The design of the Soyuz MS-18 patch incorporates a banner depicting the years 1961 and 2021, flanking the number 60, symbolizing the 60th anniversary of human spaceflight. But right now on board the Soyuz today is a NASA astronaut. He's making his second long-duration flight to the space station. So let's kick things off by learning a little bit more about Mark Vande Hei.
So arriving at the space station, something I'll never forget is looking over my left shoulder out the window in the Soyuz, where it was either a view of the Earth or blackness of space. And then all of a sudden I could see a solar array. Getting chills even thinking about it right now. It was this beautiful gold, massive. I mean, you don't ever train and see a solar array at full scale here. And so there it was, and the Russian commander sitting to my right. I had to really pay close attention, and I was supposed to be too. But as soon as I saw those solar rays, I broke the silence and said, "Wow!" And he was like, yeah, I was definitely a rookie. I was excited. The freedom of motion inside of the space station is huge. And then working was busy. It was definitely very busy. I got up there when a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft was docked, just because there's a lot of science that requires return and things have to be done in a very specific timeline. It was very fast-paced immediately. And the space station is very unique because on the space station, orbit is really a continuous free fall. And because of that, you can have some very unstable structures that might not be able to stay together if you're on the ground. They could stay together on the space station. Flames behave differently because combustion on the ground requires drawing in all these rich gases into the flame because the hot combustion gases go up and away. But there's no up and away on the space station. All directions are equal as far as that's concerned. So that behaves differently. There's all kinds of different phenomena that we can experiment with. That's why it's a wonderful laboratory. Many, many different experiments. Some of those experiments actually have to do with us as the test subjects, because we're trying to understand how to have people safely travel for longer and longer distances too. That's just a sub-part of all the science we're doing on the space station. Some people have talked about at some point in the expedition feeling like it's time to go home, but for me there was always another spacewalk or another vehicle capture that was coming up, so it always felt like suddenly I was going home, and it surprised me. I'm Mark Vande Hei, and I'm a NASA astronaut.
And Mark is just one of the three flying into space today, so now let's dive in and meet our entire crew. Born in Virginia, then raised in New Jersey and Minnesota, Mark Vande Hei earned a Bachelor of Science in Physics from St. John's University and a Master of Science in Applied Physics from Stanford University. He was commissioned in the U.S. Army through the ROTC program and served as a combat engineer. In 1999, he became an assistant professor of physics at the United States Military Academy in West Point. Vande Hei reported to the Johnson Space Center in Houston in July 2006 to serve as a capsule communicator, or CAPCOM, in mission control. Selected in June 2009 as one of 9 members of the 20th NASA astronaut class, Vande Hei first launched to the space station aboard Soyuz MS-18 on September 13, 2017. Serving as a flight engineer during Expeditions 53 and 54, he conducted 4 spacewalks, spending a total of 26 hours and 42 minutes outside the space station. During his mission, the crew marked the beginning of the first long-term increase in crew size on the U.S. segment, enabling NASA to double the time dedicated to research and achieve a record-setting 100 hours of research in 1 week. So far, Van de Heye has logged a total of 168 days in space. And Mark Van de Heye is a flight engineer for today's launch. He's seated to the right of the Soyuz commander, Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Novitsky. Born in Cherven in the Minsk region of Belarusia, Oleg Novitsky attended military pilot school and became certified as a pilot engineer. He went on to graduate from the Yuri Gagarin Air Force Academy and earned a master's degree in state and municipal administration from the Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration. Before becoming a cosmonaut, he was a qualified paratrooper instructor, a military diver, and a Class II military pilot with a total of 700 hours of flight time. Selected as a cosmonaut candidate in 2007, Novitsky qualified as a test cosmonaut in 2009. His first space flight was as Soyuz TMA-06M commander and a flight engineer during expeditions 33 and 34. His second flight to space was aboard Soyuz MS-18, where he served again as a Soyuz commander and a flight engineer for expeditions 50 and 51. While aboard the space station, he supported arrivals of multiple cargo vehicles and performed science experiments to the Russian ISS research program. Novitsky has a combined total of over 339 days in space. Oleg Novitsky is serving as the Soyuz MS-18 commander and will serve aboard the International Space Station as an Expedition 65 flight engineer. And seated to his left is first-time flyer Roscosmos cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov. Born in Khabarovsk, Russia, Pyotr Dubrov graduated from the School of Information Technologies and continued his studies at the Khabarovsk State Technical University, graduating with a specialty in software for computing machines and automated systems. Dubrov also studied and received his Master of Sports in Parachute Jumping, and his early career included serving as a software engineer at the Khabarovsk Railways, at Dalkombank, and at Seaboss Development International. Beginning his cosmonaut training in 2012, Dubrov was certified as a test cosmonaut in July 2014. Assigned to his first space flight as a member of the Expedition 64-65 crew, he will serve as a flight engineer aboard Soyuz MS-18 and on the space station. And we're back now with a quick live look inside the capsule. You can see the commander there in the center seat, Oleg Novitsky, and at the top of your screen is Pyotr Dubrov in the left seat today. And just a reminder, a little bit later in the program, we'll be taking your questions, so hop over to Twitter, use the hashtag AskNASA, and keep sending those in. Continue on, though, something you'll see inside the cabin. Before departing the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia, the commander, Oleg Novitsky, was able to describe his inspiration for the selection of the crew's zero-G indicator. We have a quick clip of that.
For the weightlessness indicator, I do have it with me. This is one of the heroes of our nice cartoon, Kitten Gaff. Yes, it is him. Especially this year, I believe it has been 40 years since this cartoon came out. And the story is that the puppy is waiting at home for the kitten that is flying in space.
And here's a closer look at Gav, or Woof the Kitten, star of the Russian animated series made from 1976 to 1982 about a Siamese kitten. And you will see that floating just in front of the commander's chair, right in front of Oleg, and we'll see that float once they separate from the third stage of the Soyuz rocket and enter into microgravity. But continuing to get views inside the capsule and of the Soyuz rocket on the launch pad there in Baykonur. We're going to continue to check in on Mark Van de Heye, Oleg Novitsky, and Pyotr Dubrov as they get ready to launch to the International Space Station. And right now we are 41 minutes and 30 seconds away. Launch is timed to take place at exactly 2:42 and 41 seconds Central. That's 7:42 and 41 seconds GMT, or 12:42 and 41 seconds over in Baykonur. And as I said, we're going to be answering some of your questions, so let's go ahead and start taking a couple of those now. And you can keep sending them in using the hashtag AskNASA. Our first one comes from Kate, who wanted to know how long can the station provide life support to more than 7 astronauts at once? That's a really great question, Kate. We don't have a specific amount of time. This is going to be a handover with 10 people on board, so that does put a little bit more of a strain on your resources, but thankfully we have what we call regenerative life support, so we're able to recycle a lot of the oxygen. We actually generate oxygen from water, which we have more than enough on board the space station, and then you have other life support responsible for scrubbing carbon dioxide, and also providing drinking water, and we have enough food and other consumables on board to last for several months. And so more than enough on board to keep these 10 crew members going for a couple of days. And also we'll have plenty when we do the Crew 2, Crew 1 handover, where we'll bump all the way up to 11 on board for a couple of days. Our next question comes from Whitney, who said, silly question, but wanted to know how many flight suits do they give you, and do you ever actually use all of those pockets? Happy launch day. It's going to differ for the astronauts. They do get a couple, just in case any get damaged or dirty. And I will tell you from personal experience, you do end up using a lot of those pockets, and you also end up forgetting stuff in those pockets, only to find it several months later when you put the flight suit back on. All right, and we'll do one more, at least one more. This one from Chrissy, who wanted to know, what will the sleeping arrangements be on the station with 10 people? And we get this question a lot. So right now we have 7 crew quarters, the individual sleep stations for crew members on board the space station. We just installed a new one just this week inside of the Columbus module. So with the extra 3, they do what's essentially called a camp out. They find space in the different modules where they'll set up a temporary spot where they can attach their sleeping bag to the wall, and they just kind of camp out there for a couple of days. The crew on board works with flight controllers here on the ground to pick those spots, to give the astronauts as much privacy as possible when they don't have their own crew quarters, and it is just temporary. Our next one comes from Alejandro, wants to know how much gravity the astronauts have during takeoff. So how many G's are they pulling? With the Soyuz, it's a fairly benign ride uphill. They'll pull about 3 or 4 G's at a maximum on the way up, primarily once they're under the power of that second and third stage. So not too bad. They typically pull a little bit more on the way home, but the ride up pretty smooth, with those liquid-fueled boosters powering them up the whole way. And we'll go ahead and take one more. This one from Get Well Wickens. He wants to know, is the Soyuz rocket a one-time use, or are there reusable parts? The rocket itself is a one-time use. It's an expendable. So all of these different rocket parts will either fall to the ground in the vast expanse of Kazakhstan, or in some of the cases like the very upper stage, burn up upon re-entry in the Earth's atmosphere. But keep sending those questions. So now we're giving you some video here. This is from yesterday, where Russian Orthodox priests did the traditional blessing of the rocket. And this is done prior to every single flight. Blessing of the rocket, and then typically we'll do a blessing of some of the pad engineers and some of the other officials, and then moving over to give the media a quick blessing as well. Today's activities in Baykonur, though, began several hours ago. So the crew was woken up in the Cosmonaut Hotel in Baykonur.
There is room here.
In a time-honored tradition, as you can see our commander doing here before departing, the 3 crew members signed the door of the rooms they occupied at the Cosmonaut Hotel.
It's looking good.
Nowitzki, this was his third time signing for Dubroff, his first, as he's the rookie amongst the crew. And then Mark Van de Hei about to make his second flight aboard a Soyuz spacecraft and to the International Space Station. This was his second time signing a door inside the Cosmonaut Hotel. They were woken up at about 3:05 a.m. local time over in Baykonur. It was about 5:05 p.m. Central Time here in Houston, or 22:05 GMT.
Okay, follow me now. This way.
And then just about 3 hours after waking up, the crew departed the Cosmonaut Hotel. You can see 6 flight suits there, so the prime crew in front, the backup crew behind them. That's NASA astronaut Anne McClain, Russian cosmonaut Anton Shkaplerov, and another Russian cosmonaut Oleg Artemyev. The backup crew stays in quarantine with the prime crew throughout their stay in the Cosmonaut Hotel and their final time in Russia beforehand. And they're with them as they go through their final suit up and rides out to the pad. Again, another time-honored tradition of flying aboard the Soyuz, the Russian Orthodox priest blessing the crew as they make their way out of the hotel and get ready to board a bus and head over to get their suits on.
That's enough water.
And so after a quick shower, they wave farewell to those that are gathered at the hotel, pose for a few final photos, and then board the bus. And then they are bound for what's known as Building 254, or the Suit Up and Integration Building. The Cosmonaut Hotel on the very edge of the town of Baykonur, just outside of the Cosmodrome grounds proper. It's about a 40-minute ride from their hotel out to the Suit Up building. And all of this happening about 3 hours after they woke up, about 6:05 in the morning, so an early morning for everybody there in Baykonur.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone. This is good.
And so once they arrived at the Integration and Suit Up facility, Building 254, the crew underwent some final medical exams and then suited up in their SOCA launch and entry suits. They're in these throughout all of the dynamic phases of flight, so they're essentially wearing these in their very quick, about 3 hour and 25-minute journey up to the space station, so they're wearing them now all the way until they arrive. And these SOCA launch and entry suits are primarily worn, if you're familiar with a lot of the different space vehicles, you're wearing these suits during the ride, and they're there to protect you in the event of what's called a cabin depressurization. So if for whatever reason a spacecraft were to lose the integrity of its hull, if the cabin were to go down to vacuum, these suits are connected to breathing air and can pressurize to protect the crew in the event that something like that happens. And that's why we have them wear these throughout all of what we call the dynamic phases, so things like a launch, or any time you're rendezvousing, docking, undocking, and then coming home, the crew members will be wearing these suits. The small blue knob you can see right at the top part of the chest is used to adjust the pressure once they go through the inflation or the pressurization of the suit itself. And after they get suited up, and we'll see it in just a moment, each of the crew members goes and gets a quick pressure check or a leak check on these suits. and so we'll be able to see them inflate a bit. But again, for Mark Vande Hei, this is the second time he's done this exact same process. Again, so after they get the suits on, they move over to get a pressure check, just again to make sure that the suit is free from leaks. They each get into basically a mock-up of a Soyuz seat. So what you're looking at is what it looks like once they're inside the capsule itself. They're assisted by suit techs who then connect their suits to a simulated line to pressurize the suit and start flowing breathing air throughout it. And so you'll see once they get locked in, the suits will kind of puff up, and that's how you can know that they're pressurized. It's easier to see if you pay attention around the leg area, and you'll see everything looks a little bit puffier. And again, the crew goes through this one at a time. While all this is happening, and we'll see it in just a few moments, there's a pane of glass to help maintain that strict quarantine. That's true for all crew members spending long-duration flights on board the space station. It's not something that we've implemented just in the last year in the current pandemic climate. Quarantine has been standard for crew members bound for the International Space Station for many years, as they're essentially launching into a closed environment, and one of the negative effects of living in microgravity for a long time can actually suppress your immune system. And so we want to make sure crew members are as healthy as possible, not bringing any cold bugs or anything like that up there with them, so they're kept in a very strict quarantine. Access to the crew is extremely limited in this time. And it's typically about the 2 weeks right before they lift off. This is the same for crew members flying on a Soyuz spacecraft. It's the same that we've been putting crew members for that have flown up on the SpaceX Dragon in the last, in the Demo 2 and the Crew 1 flights.
Уже не могу.
And then once their suits were confirmed to be leak-free,
We became very close to you, to the whole crew. And we're always here to support you if you need us. It's the most important thing to remember that. According to the evaluation of readiness for launch, the rocket and the boosters are in good technical condition. Everything is working nominally, and I wish you successful completion of your mission. I know you have done everything that has to be done during your preparation stage, and will continue talking to you via Mission Control Center. Your program will be a little bit more full than for previous cruise. You will not be bored. Hopefully you will find some time to rest. And of course, continue supporting each other and stay good friends.
Human spaceflight CATI leaders, I want to wish you all the best, and I want you to know that we're very, very proud of you, the whole crew, and know you'll have a great mission.
It's been a pleasure watching you guys get ready for this mission. We're looking forward to seeing you on orbit, and you have people across the globe waiting to support you on anything you need. So thank you very much.
And again, so they were able to talk to a number of folks inside after confirming their suits were leak-free, speaking with Sergei Korsakov, a cosmonaut who was assigned to the flight up until the swap for Mark Vande Hei, also speaking to Dmitry Rogozin and Sergei Krikalev from Roscosmos, and Ken Bowersox and Joel Montalbano of NASA. After that, though, they were able to board their bus. That happened right at about 8:56 a.m. Friday morning in Baykonur for the ride out to Launch Pad 31. And Launchpad 31 a little bit further away than Gagarin start, where for years crews have launched from Baykonur to the International Space Station. It took them about 70 minutes to get over to the pad. The crew members being helped again in those SOCA launch and entry suits to make their way to the rocket and head up the elevator for their ride to space. And then once at the pad, the crew climbing a small flight of stairs, getting set up, taking a few final photos and waving goodbye to officials from Roscosmos and NASA gathered to see the crew members off before they head into the elevator for the ride up to the top of the Soyuz rocket to board their capsule. This all took place about 2 hours ago, and since then the crew has been in their seats. Again, Oleg Novitsky is in the center seat. He's the commander of the Soyuz spacecraft. Pyotr Dubrov in the left seat, Mark Vande Hei in the right. Since they've been on board, they've gone through a number of pre-launch checks, confirming good leak check on the Soyuz capsule itself, also doing leak checks on their suits, continuing to speak with the pad engineers and the launch teams down in Baykonur as they continue to count down towards launch. Back now, though, with a live view of that Soyuz, the MS-18 spacecraft, and the Soyuz rocket on the launch pad in Baykonur. And if you're just now joining us, a reminder, liftoff is scheduled at 2:42 a.m. Central Time. That's 7:42 GMT, or 12:42 p.m. over in Baykonur. And as of right now, we are 22 minutes and 5 seconds away from that launch. And as we continue to count down, let's first explore the Soyuz spacecraft in a little bit more detail.
The whole Soyuz spacecraft is 24.5 feet long with an overall volume of 177 cubic feet and comprised of 3 modules. The descent module, situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle, contains customized seats for the crew members during launch, entry, and landing, and contains all the controls and displays necessary for the flight. It also houses life support systems, batteries for the reentry and landing, and the parachute and soft landing rocket engines that slow the Soyuz just before touchdown as the spacecraft lands in Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module, which are used to control the spacecraft's orientation, or attitude, during the descent until parachute deployment. The descent module also contains a guidance, navigation, and control system used to maneuver the vehicle during the descent phase of the mission. This descent module is 7.3 feet long with a diameter of 7.1 feet and a habitable volume of 124 cubic feet. It is the only portion of the Soyuz that survives the return to Earth. The orbital module at the top is 9.8 feet long. It connects to the descent module via pressurized hatch. This is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around following launch during the flight to the space station. It has a docking mechanism, hatch, and rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex.